In this episode of Cut Daily Notes, editor Simon Smith breaks down his edit of the iconic Way Out scene from episode 10 of Andor.
There is one way out.
Our original conversation lasted over an hour and a half, but in this video I've cherry-picked 5 of my favourite takeaways from everything Simon had to share. If you want a much more in-depth breakdown of this scene and many more insights from Simon, do check out our full conversation in the link below.
So they shoot this, I don't know, on a Monday. And on the Tuesday morning, I come in and my assistants have loaded it into the Avid and I'm watching it on the Tuesday morning. And then I assemble that on the Tuesday morning. And there were a couple of bits that I was like, I think I could do with a couple more things and I need a couple more things. And I then communicated back to the director, look, is there a chance to get these couple more things? And because they've still got all the set up and they've probably still got the cast on contract and stuff like that, you can sometimes get those extra things. So what I asked for as a pickup was a closer on these two guys who they're talking to, and a insert of the map that is on the wall. I think I'd seen the map on the wall in maybe this shot or maybe this shot, and I realised not so much that I needed a map on the wall, but after this shot here, they run out to this corridor, and then the next thing we see is them all running down the corridor towards us. And I kind of needed something to go between those. To I was struggling to cut directly from that into this running shot, and I felt that this map, which has got all the production design or the art department made this amazing, LED map thing that is meant to show and does show like where all the little prisoners are and where they're running. So it's kind of showing them moving throughout the building. So I asked for an insert of that basically. And the other thing about these two particular pickups is they don't need any of the principal cast for them. They got these two guys, and Toby the director just stood out of frame and he said, look right, look forward, look scared, and got them to just dart their eyes to the different eye lines that we needed. They didn't run the scene in the same way. They were just doing the eye lines that I needed. And the main cast could carry on doing, their schedule. My dialogue tracks, I have a real-time audio suite track effect that I applied to all of the dialogue, which is this little RX here, and that's Isotope's voice denoiser. On a high enough spec machine, you can keep that on your 4 dialogue tracks, and it will clean up your dialogue all the time. When you play back, your dialogue is cleaner, and where you might get dialogue from set, and if you put a cut in it, like here's a good example, right here, you would hear as the Atmos disappears away, and then you would hear as the Atmos pops back in there. The Isotope denoiser removes that, so it makes the dialogue isolated and just clean on the track, so you never have to worry about these cut points. That's something that I can't really live without on on a timeline, and I know that if someone turned that off, or if the Avid that did the export didn't have that plug-in, my exports would probably sound terrible, because I don't do any of the manual cleanup that a lot of editors are very good at doing. The way that I work, you have script sync, and it shows you the script in a big column, and then you have all of these lines. These represent each take, and they kind of start at the moment that the take starts. So a take might not be the whole line or the whole scene. It might just start at this point and cover a particular point of the dialogue. And then you can see these thumbnails. That's the different camera angles that we have. So for this line here, where Cassian says, tell them what to do, I can see very quickly what all my options are. And I can watch through those options super efficiently and make my decision from that. And I kind of use the script sync and my mental awareness and memory of the shots to very quickly block out the scene. So I'm like, okay, I know when Cassian says tell them what to do, I know I want to be on Cassian's shots, so I know it will be one of these 8 options here. So let's go through these 8, work out which one's the best one, drop that in. Then I know that I want to cut round to Kino for this bit, so let's look at Kino shots. What have we got for that? Jump around there, drop that in. I know that I want to build to end, perhaps, say that this over here is like the close-up. I want to build to that close-up. Let's drop that in. So the script sync, if I get rid of that now, the script sync is the way that I cut stuff. And I think actually for people that don't use it, that's maybe the most like, oh, you know, I've not seen that before. And I won't cut without it. Like a lot of people say like it's really intense amount of work or a lot of work for the assistants to have to do it. But I've cut, you know, short projects or independent projects without an assistant, and I will still spend the time script syncing it because I know that I'll save that same amount of time later if it's been script synced than if I'm just trying to cut from the clips. Like there's so much of what I do and my process, which is about investing time at the beginning to make iteration and changes and comparisons really quick at the end. You know, I want to be able to just change a timeline extremely quickly or compare two versions. Or if a director says to me, what other takes do we have of that? I want to be able to get through those really quickly. And it's much more worth my time putting in that effort at the top of the project.
When I watched the scene, you can hear they're all chanting, but I was like, I can't see anyone saying it. And I was like, but it's such an evocative moment. It's like this amazing, like they're all in this together. But only because I sat and watched it, you know, shot by shot for this conversation, I was like, oh, I can't see it. So is that something you brought in post, or?
Yeah.
So it works very well.
Here on my timeline, look, we've got Wild Track, One Way Out, and this is. I wonder if I could. Oh no, it won't. I don't think it'll work to turn on the waveforms now because it's not. I don't have the media properly. But I've got a wild track of them shouting One Way Out. And that wild track was recorded on another day. I was like, that was another pickup. I was like, right, can I have a wild track of 20 men shouting One Way Out, One Way Out? And I'll be, this will sound cruel now, and it's not, like, because they're brilliant. But in the dailies, it's just Andy. It's just Andy yelling One Way Out as he walks out. And it's almost like this moment here. That's Andy just going one way out, and on its own it would never have worked. You know, that would have sounded just like a one-man army. We saw some chanting of One Way Out. I think maybe there was definitely a couple of shots where they were shouting One Way Out, and then we nick bits of that. But you're right. Like, look here, none of them are saying One Way Out.
Yeah.
And like none of them. And I bet you're right. I bet when we go to the scene, I bet you can hear that they're all shouting it. Let's have a quick look. Where is it? It's here. Yeah, you can hear the scream of people shouting One Way Out in the background. Yeah, very, very astute of you. Very well spotted.
When the episode came out, and there's like, you know, there's that moment of One Way Out, like people on, you know, Twitter and everything saying, you know, One Way Out. Like it was such a memorable moment from the show.
We had souvenir rap T-shirts with One Way Out printed on them. You know, it's the name of the episode. The episode was named One Way Out.
Yeah, you feel it, even if in a way that doesn't matter whether you're seeing or not, because not that you would even notice. So yeah, it was just super interesting. Cool.
Very well spotted. Very well spotted.
Thanks so much for making the time to chat and to share some of your secrets. At some point I'll have to get you to spill the beans on your exact methodology for taking out blinks in a scene, which I know you talked about in the editing podcast.
I have talked about taking out blinks in the scene. There are no blink removals in this, but I have seen a lot of people ask about it. I can show really quickly how I do it. It's not even that difficult. It's not complicated at all. Let me find a...
I remember watching for the blinks after listening to that interview, which is a great interview with you and the editing podcast.
With Hayden, yeah. The way I do it is really simple. Here's an example of taking out a blink. So we've got him. He's looking forward here. He looked to his left and he blinked and then he's looking forward again. Say I don't want him to look to his left and I don't want him to blink. Right? mark an in and an out on V1, right? I copy that frame and I put it onto V2. Is it going to let me do this? No, it's not going to let me do this because it is because I haven't got the media. Anyhow, so I put it onto V2. So basically then I've got a single frame which matches this frame. Then I go into the effects panel and I freeze that frame by going time warp and just going freeze frame, and I drop it on just that single frame. Then I drag that single frame for the duration that I want to paint over, wherever the blink is. So you end up with a clip that's, however many frames long that is a freeze frame. Then I go into the blend tool and 3D warp and I put that onto that same top clip, and I just crop in around the eye, and then I open up the tracking tool. I track his face, like I find a bit of his eyebrow and track his face just in 2D, and then I tell that frozen eye to follow the track, and then you end up with a cutout around this eye following his face where it used to blink, and then I do it for the other eye. Because sometimes the head might not be straight or whatever, and the tracking might be a bit different, and you don't want to freeze his whole face. You just want to freeze as little around his eyes as you can, and that's it. Like it's not anything more than finding a single frame where his eyes open, freezing that frame, cutting out the frozen eye, and then tracking the eye to the rest of the shot, and that's it. It's not more complicated than that.
Do those get remade by somebody else down the pipe, or is okay?
Yes, they get done better in the online, and sometimes they might get done better by VFX. Often I'll use them to control, like an actor might look somewhere and you don't want them to look in that direction, so you're not just doing a blink remover. You're holding a look,